The goal is to provide you with some high level concepts today to consider now. And some of these you may want to implement right away. Some may be for down the line in the future. So just hang on to this, or just make your own notes about, oh, I need to keep that in mind for when I'm ready to talk to investors, or I need to keep that in mind when I'm ready to do a focus group or some other way of testing and getting feedback. So the topics we'll go through are your concept and how viable it is, you, your gut, developing that gut sense, and your resilience and how resilient you are or have been or need to be. The research you'll need to do, going about getting feedback, and then based on all that, how you might want to flush out your team or consider how you will do that when the time comes. And then I'll have some final tips for you. So with concept, again, we're talking about viability. Probably you have something that you think is a cool idea. You've got little feedback from people when you've passed the idea to them, whether it's, cocktail conversation or brainstorming late at night, and you've gotten some feedback that it is a cool idea. But beyond that, is it viable? Is it going to be something that you can develop into a business? Is it answering an existing problem, or is it just a really cool, unique way to produce something? And the problem and solution is really key. So you want to make sure that while you've come up with something, is there a purpose for it right now? And is the purpose big enough that it requires development of what you've come up with? In other words, is it novel? Is it unique? And is your solution the only thing out there that's trying to address it? Is your solution unique enough in and of itself that people will gravitate towards it if there's already a solution out there, for example? Is it unique and novel enough that you can get the legal protections so that, for example, a patent on it or something like that? And how do you know? Well, first of all, I'd like to talk about you. So, your experience is going to help. If you have experience in this particular area, that's great. If you don't, you're going to have to research and find out as much as you can about the area that you're moving into, the market, the people, and so on. And also, your experience in exploring something new, being a pioneer, working with others to help produce or manage a project and bring it to fruition, manage the hurdles that will come up. How savvy are you about your own gut? So that's the depiction here I've got over on the left is the guy, holding his gut. We all say that kind of comes from our stomach, but that's because that's kind of a place in our bodies where we feel that nervousness when we have to go present and speak or go on stage for some people, or being at the top of a high mountain, ready to ski, that kind of thing. Is this the right time? Is this the right equipment? Do I have the right people? You'll need to develop that sensibility. It's kind of like your sixth sense of understanding, is this the right time to talk to this potential investor? Or do I need to do more research? Because a potential investor conversation is going to bring up all kinds of questions that they will anticipate that you have or should have addressed. And if you haven't, you could really run into trouble as far as being believed or as far as being considered serious, savvy, capable. So you want to be careful with the timing, and your gut will help you with that. And the more you trust your gut, you'll know what research to do. And the more research you do and the feedback that you get, the more confidence you'll have and the stronger your gut, and it all feeds in together. And for many of you, you've probably gone through something like that. Resilience, though, is important. How introverted are you? And how comfortable are you with someone giving you critical feedback? It may not be the thing you want to hear. You may be so in love with your idea, your project, that it will be difficult for you to hear somebody push back or ask hard questions that you're a little too easygoing to ask yourself. Well, you need those folks if they are indeed giving you positive critical feedback that helps you think through thoroughly what you're working on and what you need to do before you, I like to say, before you throw open the garage door and show off the car. Is the car, it looks shiny on the outside, but you haven't vacuumed the inside? It's not ready, and so on. So, when you get that critical feedback, or when you find proof through your research that you didn't expect, in other words, you think you're the first one to tackle something, but your research shows you that there's two other projects out there. They may not be in your city or your state or your country, but somebody's already kind of working on the same project. That tells you something. Okay, it's already out there. So somebody else already thinks this is a good idea. Does that mean you should stop? Should you stop because they're McDonald's and they've already figured out the whole hamburger game? So pretty much, it's going to be hard for you to compete with them. Or are you able to come at the market in a completely different way that's unexpected because of the timing or the technology that's available that's not been available before? So you have to be resilient enough that when you get negative feedback or just critical feedback that's meant to be helpful, that you can take that and allow it to reshape your vision and continue on the road, or enable you to pivot so that you can continue in a healthy way and it actually strengthens you, like adding fibers to a rope that make it even stronger. So please have some perspective about yourself, because through this journey, you should seek all kinds of feedback, but be prepared for the feedback that doesn't always validate what you have, or that does validate you, but gives you positive feedback in a way that you don't ignore the negative. Um, and then lastly, I want to emphasize that you need to build in time for yourself. So many people in the Bitcoiner space are into health, doing resistance training, and otherwise improving the body, and therefore improving the muscles. And what is required of that when you go to the gym and you work your legs, work chest, whatever, you're tearing the muscle. And if you go right back the next day and do the exact same workout, you haven't given your body time to improve. That's why it's important to do alternate days. Maybe you go to do resistance training one day and cardio the next. Well, somewhere in there, you need to rest those muscles so that they have time to repair, because in what you've torn apart, when they bind together, kind of like compound fracture of the bone, once it builds back, it's stronger. The muscle's the same way. When you give yourself time, you're giving yourself to take the feedback and research and improve. Plus, you're letting your mind wander away from what you've been so focused on, that wandering time allows you to kind of think about it in a different way. It lets your subconscious, your unconscious mind, while you're not even thinking about it, you're over here walking, exercising, resting, thinking about something else. You're at dinner, and all of a sudden, that new idea comes, and it's something you can plug in and improve what you're working on. To me, that's a lot like that tearing of the muscle, giving it time to reunite and be stronger. You've got to give yourself downtime, especially when you hit roadblocks. Just get up and walk away. You'll be amazed at how the brainstorms can kind of come back together. So, before you do anything, you really ought to, before you do anything concrete, as far as like writing code or engaging a team, and we're going to work on this, you ought to do your research to understand where you're going. So, who's your market? Is it the total addressable market? Is it a portion of that? And so on. How are you going to position yourself? That requires research. You need to understand the people that you're addressing. And when you're in the Bitcoin community, this is paramount. It's a very competitive community. And that, I think, is another point I should have made under discussing you and your resilience. Bitcoiners are very competitive and introverted. So those are two different qualities. So to the competitiveness, iron sharpens iron. So it's always good to reach out and um, get good feedback and dip into what already exists in this ecosystem to help you with your research. But on the introverted side, don't be so locked into your head that you don't ask for feedback, that you don't reach out and do research. So you'll be able to find some basic stuff online about the audience that you're trying to address, the people that you're trying to reach, who would be your buyers, why would they be your buyers. You need to understand how those consumers act, how they consume information. And that brings you back to the problem solution questions. Um, how do they make their decisions? And I put culture in here, not to be all DEI, but more to think about uh, how does culture influence how someone might purchase or when they might purchase? Maybe they're interested, but they've got to, because of their culture, they've got to talk it through with their upper management, if it's a business, or with their family. And it may take a long time before they make a decision, as opposed to somebody else who's completely autonomous and can make a decision rather quickly, or is the head of an organization and has the authority to make a decision. So you'll need to weigh those kinds of things. For example, Carr said earlier in his presentation, PlebLab had its first international startup day in Mexico City last year, and that we anticipate doing another one this year. And it could be this place, that place. It could be in Hawaii. Such a common mistake, but I got to stand up for my Hawaii Bitcoiners. And because I lived in Hawaii for a couple of years, so many people on the mainland include Hawaii as international, but it's our 50th state. So I mentioned that, not to poke fun there, but more importantly, I was fortunate to be part of a research team while I was out there for graduate school. And one of the things that we honed in on was cultural influence on the buying process, on the business goals. And just keep that in mind because it could accelerate or decelerate your project. And that includes whether you're going to VCs or individual investors, investors close to home, like friends and family. There's a certain culture within that as to how those groups approach funding and what they expect, how they expect to participate or not, and how you might expect to hear from them as mentors or not, and so on. And here at the end, what I mean about the market, is it young or established? If it is a young and growing market, and technically some would say Bitcoin is a very young nascent market. Others would say it's been around since, 2008. Depending on what you're trying to build, if you're trying to build a wallet, that's not a new thing. People haven't just started doing wallets in 2025 as of January. So you have to consider, is it a young market? And I mentioned burgers earlier. I mean, if you were setting up a burger stand or a coffee shop, it's been around a while. If it's a young market, can you grow with that market? If it's an established market, can you do something that introduces a new way, a new format, a new way to educate? Maybe you're creating something that helps educate people around Bitcoin in a way that hasn't already been established, or in a way that's new and will grow as Bitcoin grows, for example. Formation. This is very important, and you should do a little research around this. You can do independent research online, and you can talk to attorneys. Um, we can help you at PlebLab kind of consider which direction you want to take. There is there are decisions you would want to make with respect to liability. If you are an LLC, for example, there are certain things that can happen if you fell into bankruptcy, or if somebody wanted to sue you. Could they sue the owner of the company directly, or are there certain protections because of how you've been formed? So whether you go the Inc. route or the LLC route, um, may depend on those types of protections, as well as investment. Are you anticipating continuing to be a private company, or are you wanting to have investors and grow and have shareholders down the line? It's probably important that you file as an Inc. And do you want to be a Delaware company? Do you want to file in the state that you're in, or maybe you're overseas? Can you have even if you're overseas, can you have representation in Texas, since we're talking about PlebLab, which is situated in Texas. So, questions that you want to tackle before you put your foot out there as an established business. Hurdles. Um, as an owner, you will have certain things to consider as far as hurdles from now to the end of time, whether you exit the company or close the company down. You're always going to have hurdles. So the more that you can do continuous research, it's kind of like continuous R&D. Um, you will want to look at funding and sorry, got a little off track there. Um, Hurdles in funding, whether you're going to get funding from a mom, mom and dad, from friends initially, just to get started, to buy the certain things that you need, equipment, to bring somebody on board to throw a few sats their way, a few dollars away, depending on what they need, just to be able to have someone to support your team as you're getting started. Um, and then obviously, down the road, funding hurdles of the timing for when you get seed, pre-seed, and so on. Legal hurdles. You'll need to know when and how to file certain documents, not just for whether you want to be an Inc. or an LLC, but also the documents for agreements for people that you're going to be working with. And what is entailed in those agreements, whether it's an employment contract or a contract for a contractor. Um, and investors, of course, you're going to have clauses in there about equity and timing and so on. Other types of documents that go on with the formation of a business. And then I mentioned here participation in equity. You can set that up typical ways, and you can also set it up for partner A. You can design your equity agreement one way, and for partner B, you can design it a different way. You don't have to do things the same way across the board. How much equity do you want to give and to whom? Those are things you'll need to research and consider what's going to be the right fit for you and at what stages of your development. Advising, um, these are other hurdles. And when do you need certain advisors? Lawyers, we like to say um, that it is important to speak to an attorney early in the game. Some of them won't charge you an arm and a leg just for a little brainstorming conversation. I wouldn't put off speaking to an attorney because you think it's going to be expensive. It can be more expensive down the road. So call them up and say, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what I need help with. Is that something you charge by the hour, or do you require a retainer, or is there another arrangement? And you can do the same with potential CPA and so on. When you're looking for feedback, this can happen at any stage and should happen ongoing through the life of your business, because you are going to um, need input from people who have been down the same road that you've been down. You need somebody who has that early business startup experience, as well as somebody who has dealt with mergers and acquisitions down the road when you get there, years from now. So there will be various areas and stages where you'll want feedback. Um, the reason why I have here on this particular line where you can see problem is emphasized bold and solution is a little smaller. When you put together a feedback group, for example, if you decide I'm going to survey 20 people on this concept and I'm going to capture their feedback and then distill it and determine how that informs our next steps. You want to ask problem questions so that you can uncover what their pain points are and then turn around and determine, does your solution address those pain points? So instead of saying, you're hungry, aren't you? Wouldn't you like this hamburger? You want to say, um, when you get hungry, really hungry at the end of a day, or no, you might say, when you get hungriest, and let them tell you, oh, I get hungriest in the morning. Let's say you uncover 17 people out of 20 who get hungriest in the morning. You're going to shift what you thought was a dinner proposition to breakfast. So let them tell you what their pain points are. Continuing this metaphor or this example, you might say, when you're hungriest in the morning, what do you what do you reach for? If you could have anything, what would it be? And you might, because you were thinking it was a dinner question, you come back around and say, "Well, if you were hungry in the evening, how is that different from the morning? Do you crave different foods? Do you go out of your way to leave the house and go get something or get something on your way home from work, at dinner? Or are you hungry enough in the morning that you're motivated to leave your house?" So in that way, I'm trying to help you see that you want to ask them what their pain points are. What is causing them problems that's really motivating them to get out of their comfort zone to solve that problem. And then behind the scenes, you'll match up and see, do those answers compare with what your assumptions were about providing a solution? Now, after you've exhausted the problem questions with them, you may in the same session want to ask them solutions, or you may want to come back to them after you've retrofitted your solution and say, "Hey, when we were talking about when you were searching for the right meal to solve your breakfast hunger, would this solution that looks like this, that feels like this, that sounds like this, does that match?" Um, and so you're getting closer to something before you've even done code. Again, I'm going back to do the research, get feedback to the extent that you can before you write code. It's kind of like the old measure twice, cut once concept. So the more information that you can obtain, the better off you'll be, financially. You'll have confidence, and you'll also have support when anybody else asks you, "Well, how do you make a proposal, you make a supposition in your proposal, and somebody may call you on the carpet and say, 'Well, how do you know that?' You can say, 'We did this research. I have this feedback.'" And that will prove to them that you're on more solid ground. Another thing you want to get feedback about is messaging and how you can influence the audience. How do they consume information? This is important, especially in the Bitcoin community, because we're rather narrow in, where we consume information, meaning we don't just go to all the social medias. We've kind of migrated, a lot of us have migrated either just to Bitcoin Twitter or off of Bitcoin Twitter to Noster, for example. Maybe we don't do anything on Telegram. There's a lot of meetups now that are moving from Telegram to Signal, if they weren't already there, for privacy. And so those privacy concerns may limit how you're able to communicate into those audiences. So obtaining feedback from established founders or understanding how they're communicating already might help you outline the ways that you're going to connect with your audience, demonstrate to them that you have an offering, that it's viable, and allow for them to give you feedback on that through those channels. Also, when it makes sense to do so, you may want to ask your audience or get a sense how your audience wants to be involved. Do they want to connect with you on Slacker News, Stacker News, which is a great place to brainstorm, answer questions. Maybe you want to set up an AMA when you get far enough along. Um, and be on podcasts. You may want to hold off being on podcasts until you know that you have something solid and have an outline of how you will communicate that. It's important when you are sharing your message and your story that you're very strong and practiced in staying on topic. Especially, for example, let's say you're in Top Builder, you make it to the end of the road, you're in Austin in March, and you're before an audience of about 130, 150 people in the room throughout the day. We sold out last year, so it will be a packed room. And maybe there's somebody from the media there. Last year, we had a couple representatives from the media, including CNBC. If you're not solid with your message, regardless of who is on the other side of the microphone or the notepad asking questions, it'll be very easy for them to draw you off sides and tell the story they want to tell. So it would be wise to practice your message with your team. You can practice it with us at PlebLab. You can work with entities like Toastmasters. You don't have to talk about your Bitcoin project, but do um, practice sessions, contemporaneous speaking, which will help you think on your feet. And when people are trying to draw you off sides, will help you address that politely and get back on your message and telling your story your way. So that the media or whoever is inquiring doesn't spin it or misconstrue it, either because they have a different motivation or maybe they just misunderstood you. Maybe they heard something differently. You need to be practiced in a way that you can bring them back around politely, cordially, in a way that they're enticed and they want to hear more. And with respect to hearing more, that's another thing I did want to mention. When you are gathering feedback, when you're doing your research, let's say you're interviewing those 20 people, that little mini audience, that test audience I gave as an example earlier. You ask a question, they answer it maybe with a short little paragraph, but you feel like there's more there. You need to use negotiation tactics such as little probing questions. They may have finished, you think there's more, you might say, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more." And then stop talking. Or, "That's That's interesting. Can you expand on that? Please explain." And then stop talking. People, Americans especially, are uncomfortable with gaps in the conversation. And so they'll jump in and keep talking to fill that gap. Not to be antagonistic, but what you're doing there is pulling on the rope and saying, "This is interesting. Can you give me some more feedback? Tell me more." And to the extent that they do have more to share, um, you've gotten some bonus information. If they don't, you'll know it and you just move on to the next question or topic. Um, but be mindful of those tactics to use to solicit more information and to be observant when it's being used on you. Um, People that you can get feedback from. Right now, obviously, low hanging fruit, friends, people around you in the Bitcoin community you already know, maybe teammates that you've already engaged or you will engage as this project moves along that you want to tap to be a part of your collaboration. Um, Mentors that you've worked with in the past or that you have networked with and that you want to give the compliment of requesting their insights to advise you. That's a compliment, but it needs to be a two-way street too. Trusted advisors, that's more in the area of CPAs and attorneys, people who are experienced in particular niches who can be part of your team now or down the road, whether just on a particular aspect, like the formation of your business, or ongoing as your trusted legal advisor, for example. I mentioned Stacker News. There's entrepreneurs in the community. There's all kinds of networking groups. Austin is, if you're in Austin, for example, is a hotbed for entrepreneurship. Different cities and towns have other networking groups and meetups that you can go to. You don't have to necessarily divulge why you're there. You can ask information about them. What do they do? What was their experience? People like to be asked about them. And by listening, you can gather a lot of good research information that informs your approach. And then, of course, incubators and accelerators, a little bit like Wolf in New York and PlebLab in Austin. One of the things that we do, we not only have the desks, the monthly memberships where you can just be in the space. It's so healthy to be around other people who are working hard and as serious as you that you can brainstorm with. So that's one thing that you can do by being involved with PlebLab or an entity similar to us. And then separately in our ongoing team of people who are participating in our accelerator, those folks are getting more hands-on, targeted insights and information and mentoring to speed up the process of what they need to do to grow, the tools that they need, the people that we can connect them with, the conversations that they can have by being a part of our Slack and so on. The same goes with Wolf. It's being a part of their cohort. When you have those opportunities, it really accelerates your potential for growth and the people that you can connect with and the people that just wind up coming into your path. So do consider those, whether it's us or someone else. Um, and we're getting to the end here. If anybody is worried about time, we're getting close to the end um, for today. Once you've done your research and feedback, you may have had some initial people that you already have on your team or that you knew you were going to tap because of their talents or how their talents complement what you don't have and how you guys can combine and work together. But after research and feedback, this is somewhat similar to that measure twice, cut once. You'll have a better sense of who strategically you really need on your team today or someone you need, but you can't quite afford them now, but 6 months from now, that's the type of person you're gonna look for, or 6 months from now, you're going to ask particular person that you have in mind specifically. And so you'll understand what you need to grow your team urgently right now, and therefore, "Oh my gosh, that but I've gotta pay that person, so I need to find the budget, so I need to find investment." Or down the road, I'm gonna need somebody in 6 to 9 months who can help me with XYZ, so I'll need to get the funding by 6 months so that I can begin to pay that salary at that time. So, again, research and feedback will help you build the team now or in the future and put the budget together for that. So, this includes team members who are gonna help you build, help you with execution, production, maybe they have certain specialties that you don't with respect to code, UX, fundraising, legal, communications, and so on. Plus, that's your core team, plus the outside team that's advising into you, the mentors, the advisors, the attorneys, entrepreneurs, founders who've been there, done that kind of thing, especially in the Bitcoin space, because they've already navigated some of the difficult hurdles that were there a couple of years ago that have been solved or figured out, or at least reduced in size. So tap into that. And just keep in mind, you're going to need to continue this process of working on your project, but keeping an eye out for who else do I need to bring on and when, and you're going to get attention from people who are enthusiastic but might not be a good fit for your team. So that goes back to you and your gut and being thoughtful about who you let in backstage and who you say, hey, that sounds really good. I'm going to keep you in mind down the road for somebody that you're not ready for just yet, and other people who, it's just not a good fit. So this is my last slide, and I want to show you a couple tips here. These are in green because there's a website I'll share with you after I get done here and share the slides. I'll include this website. It had examples from a gentleman who had interviewed multiple founders, and I thought the site would be helpful to you as a reference point to, talk to somebody who's founding a company similar to yours, or maybe not similar to yours, but encountered some initial difficulties that you're also grappling with. So, the tips here in green come directly from that site. For example, you want to build prototypes and test early. That can be something as simple as sketching out a spreadsheet before writing code, because that's something you can do more easily and edit more quickly than you've written code. You've been working on it for months, and all of a sudden you figured out, oh my gosh, we're actually going down a rabbit hole we don't need to, and we got to backtrack. So you can save yourself a little hard time and money by playing around with prototypes and how you can test concepts with your test audience, and hear back from them. Hey, I really want this. That's great. It's cool, but does it solve a problem? Or are they just enamored with a solution, but they would never spend money, or they wouldn't spend the money that they need to spend to cover the cost of production? So those are questions you need to uncover. You don't want to build a full product until you get the, real pull from the market. You get feedback from one person who says it's great, I'm all in, and 15 people who say that's cool, but I wouldn't spend money on it. That's not a pull from the market. Vice versa, and you've got some direction. You want to figure out who you can sell to most easily. You don't want to have to force it, and that'll come from your research and feedback. And you want to develop a product that unlocks revenue for your customers. So if you are solving a pain point for your target that enables them to solve a pain point for their target, you're really onto something and deepening the relationship with your first point. So think further down the line with that. And this is where seasoned founders and mentors can help you. And then lastly, you need to review what you've learned from the above suggestions. So this point five will be something that you should hold on to for later. For example, you're just getting started, and we hope through this top builder process to help prepare you for when you're ready to go talk to your investors and those who want to partner with you and help stabilize and fuel your project concept and business. So, what I'm giving you here in white are suggestions that, based on what you have gone through in the feedback and research, you can incorporate that into your pitches to future partners and to future investors so that you show them, based on what you learned from the research and feedback, how you pivoted. Because going back to what I mentioned earlier, if someone asks you a question, you're talking to a prospective investor, they're marginally interested. You make a supposition and they say, "Yeah, how do you know that? How did you uncover that?" You can say, "We got this feedback, which caused us in our process 3 months in to pivot and improve what we're doing." That shows that you have critical thinking, you're willing to take feedback. That's important for them to know. You want to show what you had outlined and targeted, which can demonstrate your ability for planning and forecasting. You've got people on your team that have spatial ability that can not only get down into the details and execute, but think long term, which shows again your openness to feedback and collaboration, which is what a mentor, an investor might be interested in. You want to show how you employed the feedback and the research. Again, kind of goes back to your discernment, your flexibility, and your maturity. And then, hang on, I got to move something so I can read the last of this. These points, of course, are going to go, or these demonstrations that I want you to show will go along with any experience that you may have coming into this. So some of you may be completely green. This is your first time to be an entrepreneur, to launch a venture. Some of you have launched something before or been on a team, but you're moving into like one of the companies here, and one of the prospective entrepreneurial companies is moving into Bitcoin. So this is new. They've got experience and qualifications elsewhere, but they need to parlay that into how that's going to work in this space, how that's going to work on this particular venture. And then you need to show your financials, your product expectations, how you're going to fund, and how you're going to build. So hopefully that all makes sense. I do not know why this is not moving on. There we go. That's all I have. So I'm going to exit out of this, and I am open to any questions you may have.